Welcome to That Gray Area. I'm Erin.
And I'm Vanessa.
We're lifelong friends entering that certain time of life that can be a bit of a gray area. We'll be taking a look at what being a woman and aging looks like right now. So join us in That Gray Area.
Welcome to episode 3.
Today we're talking about self-love. What is self-love and how do we get self-love?
And what messages have we learned that have affected the way we love ourselves?
Indeed.
And how do we fucking flip the script on that?
Exactly. There are a lot of impediments to self-love. I have some on this list that I wrote, and I would say I suffer from every single one of these, or have at some point in my life. Perfectionism.
Read the list, Darren.
Perfectionism. Ding, 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 ding.
Yes.
Ugh. God, that's still a really hard one. That's really hard for me. Not being compassionate with ourselves.
I am very bad at that.
I am happy to say that while there's much improvement to be had in this area, I'll say I'm most improved in this area.
Most improved.
Thank you.
The yearbook entry for most improved student is...
I have learned to be a lot less. I was literally one of those people who, after every single encounter socially, whether it was at work, at a party, with people I love, people I cared about, I would repeat the conversation in my head. What did I say that was dumb? And if you, like, even with you, if I would be the next day and if I text you, like, did you have a good time last night? Which I rarely would ask you that, but any kind of text, if you didn't respond immediately, I'd be like, oh God, that's it. I said something to piss her off. I'm a freak. I'm so hard on myself.
Yeah.
And also that's such an egotistical thing to think that anybody's actually really thinking about me that much.
Right? And that's something that people don't always recognize, is that it's just as egotistical to assume that everyone's thinking about your bullshit as much as everyone's thinking about how much they love you. They're both extremely egotistical.
It really
which is funny.
is. I've really been working with, that's one thing. Well, we'll get to that later, but I did talk to my kids a lot about that. Like, most of the time, not to make you feel bad, but ain't nobody thinking about you.
Yeah, I've said it. You're not that special. You're not that important.
I mean,
only to me.
and
your dad.
And to just, if nothing else, if that can just give yourself a break, people.
Yeah.
Because really, unless you've said something so egregious, people are grown-ups. They can call you and say,
if they have a problem with something you said or did, yes.
Or they could be upset with something you said or did and then choose to forgive you without bringing it up.
Right.
Or they can harbor it and be angry, and that is also their choice.
Absolutely.
Okay, so compassion, problem.
And we don't get to decide what they feel.
For shiz.
Yeah.
For shizzle.
I have somebody in my life who likes to decide how people should feel and let them know that.
Good luck with that! I'm sure that goes well.
Not really.
But that's hard to learn.
Okay. What else is on?
I resemble that with Mark.
I'm sidebar.
Not knowing how to set boundaries.
Ooh.
I literally, I'm still learning how to set boundaries.
Of course. Me too.
And what are boundaries? I used to use boundaries as a manipulation, and that was pretty much the opposite of what they're intended for.
Yeah. So, I did not and don't suffer from too much perfectionism, although it definitely sneaks in there when it comes to things like body image. But I definitely struggle with boundaries. And I think that if you have a childhood in which you did not have a lot of control over what was happening to you, then it's very difficult to learn what they look like.
Absolutely.
So how would you even know how to set a boundary if you were not raised or taught by somebody to give you what that looks like?
And what is interesting as I reflect upon our friendship of so many years and how different we really are, there's always obviously a lot of similarities too in our experiences. And so I had a lot of boundary issues that were crossed when I was younger. And my response to that was to control absolutely everything in my life that I could possibly control. And so I spent decades trying desperately to control people, places, and things in my life in just a futile and really really sad, but understandable attempt to make myself feel safe. And that was really all stemming from things that happened when I was young, like, you know, preteen to in my teenage years, things happening that I felt out of control. So I responded with absolute control over everything. And that is something I still really struggle with.
See, and I had the opposite. I struggled to control myself and to mold and make myself into whatever the other person I was dealing with needed me to be to feel safe. I had a volatile father and became a chameleon at a very young age to figure out, and I could immediately hone in on what his mood was and what I needed to be in order for him to not get annoyed, mad, irritated, or irate with me. And I was good at it.
I mean, kids are so incredibly resilient and adaptable. And
I'm still a chameleon, and I have a very hard time turning that off.
Yeah, and I have worked so very hard through 12-step programs and therapy and other things, Buddhism, to just really check myself and my ability and my need, I should say, for everything to be my way, and to realize that I am not responsible for everybody and everybody's feelings and everybody's thoughts and it's so exhausting. So fucking exhausting. And so that's something that you struggle with your isms and I with mine, and maybe why we got along so well is because I needed somebody who would let me control everything.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, I'm pretty supple, and I tend to find
I hate that word.
My personality is quite malleable.
Supple.
It's true.
You are.
I have never demanded I pick what movie I go to. I have never demanded what we do tonight. I've never demanded where we eat. I am always so fucking go with the flow that it can often be mistaken as having no personality. A funny story about that: on my first date with my boyfriend, he thought I was not interested in him because I seemed flippant about what we ate and what we split. And I was like, whatever you like's fine. I love all food. P.S. He didn't know that about me, but I was like, anything you want's fine. I'm fine splitting anything. Yeah, sure. That sounds good. I didn't make any suggestions. And so he thought I was completely checked out of the date and didn't like him.
Well, I mean, I guess I could understand that, right?
Yes. But what it was I don't care about little things in life like this. If I'm not going to think about this tomorrow, I just don't care at all.
And I think about everything all the time.
That is why we get along so good.
For real.
Yeah. We never went anywhere in our teens, 20s, 30s that you didn't pick.
It was, and what's funny is looking back on that, I remember probably in my 20s, one of our mutual friends saying, you always are the one and you pick everything and you do today. I was shocked by this statement because I was not self-aware. I was just so in my disease is what I really call it, my disease of control. I didn't see that. I just didn't see. It was like, well, but my ideas are really fun and great. So,
duh.
I have good ideas. I have good taste, and I know what's fun.
And P.S. all that's true.
So let's get with the program. And with that,
and I couldn't handle the pressure of choosing and having made the wrong choice, so I never chose.
Oh,
because if I choose wrong, you won't like me, and I'm such a people pleaser.
And if you don't like what I chose, something's wrong with you.
Right? Now you see why we're so close.
But no, so dealing with our isms.
You've worked a lot on yourself. I have worked a lot on
Indeed.
myself. A lot of therapy, a lot of self-help books, and a good amount of 12-step program as well.
Yes. So we were saying like childhood impediments. I think,
impediments to loving yourself,
to
or
loving
being your authentic
yourself.
self.
And for me, that was having a dad kind of leave at a relatively early age. 9. And just really feeling so unloved by that, so hurt by that. And so obviously it's no surprise that so much of your childhood is the foundation for your future self-esteem. I mean, you know what I mean? So it's like, I was looking at my notes and there was this thing I read. It said, no surprise that studies show things like parent relationships, poverty level, maternal depression, and the father being present in the home all have lasting effects on self-esteem. And then I wrote parentheses, we're fucked.
We're totally fucked. And what's funny is that this is a podcast by women talking about women in midlife and a little bit of menopause. I'm thinking we're not going to have that many male listeners, but boy, I want to talk to you men right now and just say, just love your daughters exactly how and who they are.
For sure.
And just be there. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to spend money on them. You just have to give them time and attention and make them feel loved.
I mean, I split up from my daughter's father when she was 9 months old. She's never known us together. And, you know, that we had a pretty volatile relationship, which is why once Skylar came into the picture, I knew it had to end because there was just a lot of unhealthy behaviors happening in the home. But something about my little abandoned 9-year-old self knew that this child needed to have her dad in her life. And it would have been real easy for me to cut him out. I mean, there was a lot, you know, there was problems happening. But I set up a structure where for years, it was like this every week for years and years and years, like most of her life. He comes and picks her up Saturday morning. They spend the day together. She spends the night. He drops her off Sunday morning. It was like that for years. They only saw each other that one day a week, but it was consistent.
Yes.
And, you know, I'm happy to say that he is somebody...
And that was big for... I'm just going to interject here and say, for somebody with the kind of control issues you had back then, surrounding his behavior, and that... I remember that being very, very difficult for you.
I sobbed every single time he drove away with her for years.
Yes.
It was really, really hard.
Yes.
I'm happy to report that he has found a lot of health and healing in his life. And I look at their relationship now, and he is not a perfect dad. He's a goofball. He's really struggled in a lot of ways. But his love for her is unquestioned. Yes. And he just puts her up on this pedestal, and he thinks everything she does. I mean, she wrapped him around her little finger really early on, so there was some issues with that. Why doesn't she listen to me? I'm like, because you're a pushover. But I will say her sense of self-esteem in that area when it comes to men and what she expects in a relationship is really next level. And I really credit that. I mean, I did a lot, but he was there. He just loved her and was there consistently.
Right. But he wasn't there maybe in the traditional home, but he was still there.
Yeah.
And you can still have that.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, I didn't have that, and, you know, I worked through it, but it did help. It really was a big part of me just being full of a lot of self-loathing, physically and just personality-wise and spiritually. And your childhood was very different than mine. You had 2 parents in the home.
Yes, I had... But just before we end on that, like, it's so interesting, isn't it, that we try to make up for whatever deficiencies we had as kids by just going, our pendulum just swinging in the opposite direction. And sometimes that can swing too far.
Sure.
But as a fan of hers, I'm just going to say you handled that really beautifully. Well done.
Thanks, Vanessa.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
And yeah, so I came from a 2-parent household. My parents were married for 49 years. My father suffered extreme abuse as a child. Extreme abuse and extreme neglect. He ran away from home when he was 14 and was on his own ever since. He spent most of his life as a functioning alcoholic. He was one of the smartest men I ever knew, but his self-esteem was completely in the toilet because he was uneducated and never grew up feeling loved. So he did the absolute best he could with me, and I know that, and I've come to terms with that relationship. But growing up, I did not know that. And growing up was basically my father acting out behaviorally, and he was just all over the place. You never knew who you were going to get on any given day with my dad. He could be the best person you ever met, the funniest, the nicest, the center of attention. He was 6'7". He was a big personality, and outside the family, everybody loved my dad.
He was a big character.
He was.
For sure.
He was. When I was growing up, there was a thick stack of Playboys on the back of the toilet. And both Erinn and I grew up with that, heard her grandfather and me at my parents, and I would obviously, as a child, look through them.
You're curious.
I was curious. Well, I just remember being terrified because my mother didn't look like these women, and I just assumed that meant we were on borrowed time with him because he was eventually going to leave because that's what he liked. And if I want to keep a man in my life, I have to look like these women.
And do the things you see them doing.
Right. And couple
so
that.
Weird.
Well, number one, Playboy was pretty minor. I mean, it was Playboy. It wasn't anything freaky deaky, fortunately. But, you know, I just assumed that women were the object of men's attention because of their beauty, not for any other reason. And that led me into a really super fun long-term eating disorder. So from 16 to 31, I was actively bulimic. And nobody in my life knew.
I didn't know it.
She was my best friend. My mother didn't know. I have a little sister who's 12 years younger than me. She didn't know.
I didn't
My
know
partner
until you
didn't.
were already,
My relationships didn't know. Nobody knew. And I was good at it. And I was good at hiding it.
Well, they say, as I'm doing my research, 1 in 10 women, college-age women, which would be, that's the age somewhere in that zone, 1 in 10 suffer from an eating disorder.
I would argue it's even higher than that because eating disorders have many faces. Overeating is an eating disorder. Undereating is an eating disorder. Bulimia is an eating disorder. I've dated men who have bulimic tendencies and they just don't identify as having that. So I think a lot of people aren't aware what an eating disorder looks like. So I would argue that it's probably higher than that. But
that's crazy.
I was fortunate enough that through a 12-step program, I got a handle on that. And it's been, 31, so 17 years without...
High five.
High five. 17 years without that behavior in my life. And it was very freeing because when you are in the midst of an eating disorder, it is all encompassing. Whatever your ism is, booze, sex, drugs, food, no matter what that looks like, it is all encompassing because it is the only way you deal with what's going on inside of you. Like, yours was control. But
that's control too, in a way.
Oh, it's
right?
100% control because if I liked food. Our relationship is perfect because she's a foodie and I'm an eatie.
I love to cook.
She loves to cook and I love to eat. It's perfectly symbiotic. So, but what happened was working in this, if you listen to episode 2, you know that we met and grew up basically in a restaurant and pie shop. And I loved pie for 9 years. I pretty much had 2 or 3 pieces of pie every week. And I never got sick because I would just move on to a new flavor. But all of a sudden, once I got a car, once I got this big life and I started going out with friends, I stopped walking everywhere. I stopped moving my body so much. I stopped roller skating, which is a big thing that I did to escape my household growing up. I started gaining weight. Well, funnily enough, I had just heard my friend Christine at work, and I'm not blowing her anonymity in that she's a big speaker on eating disorders and has found relief as well. She said, oh, well, when that was happening to me, I would just throw up as soon as I was done eating. And I was like, what a fucking brilliant idea.
I can't even imagine. I hate throwing up so much.
I know.
It terrifies me.
Nobody likes it, but you get good at it. Let me tell you, it pretty much ruined a lot of my life for a very long time. And I had so much work to undo after that. But I will say that having that eating disorder did send me to a 12-step program. And through a 12-step program, it is the first place I ever learned any self-love.
And, what kills me too, as I look back, and we were talking via Marco Polo, which is our favorite app, about this podcast and about this topic. And I just said to Vanessa, it just really chokes me up to think about, I look at those 2 young women, like literally just babies. We're fucking babies together. And we're, cutie little babies. And how much pain we were both running from for very different reasons, but we were both in so much pain. And I look back.
I didn't know about your issue at home, and I was close to you too.
I didn't come out with any of the stuff and we'll talk about that in another episode. But yeah, there was just a lot of pain happening and probably a lot of denial on our part.
100%, because
we weren't ready.
We weren't educated in how to deal with it. We weren't educated in how to handle it. So let's just pretend it doesn't exist.
And just go have some fun.
Woo!
But I look at those 2 cuties.
Distract.
Indeed. Now I can remove myself from that, and I can look at myself as I would look at my child who's now around that age and think, God, you guys were beautiful. You were so full of life. You were so beautiful. And you had all this self-loathing, all this hatred, all this just, I mean, whether it's body image that you're suffering from, lack of self-esteem, whatever it is. And they say 97% of women have at least one negative thought about their body every single day.
Can you believe that?
I mean, I think for me it was more.
Oh, definitely.
For sure.
A girl with an eating disorder who grew up with a stack of Playboys on the back of the toilet? Are you kidding me? I hated my body.
I just, and as...
God, I looked so good back then. Even before the bulimia set in, I was just
You were
I was
tall
great.
and long-legged and adorable, and I was big-haired and doe-eyed and bubble-butted, and there's a lot of society stuff that happens too with that. Which
we grew up in the heroin chic era, and no one could be that other than Kate Moss.
Seriously, I mean, I am big-butted. I called it my butt guard. I wore a shirt tied around my ass for like
You were an ass
years.
curtain?
Oh my god!
I didn't know that.
So I was a size 4.
But it was popular then, though.
But
this was the days of Guns N' Roses, and Axl Rose had a butt curtain on every day.
I wasn't doing it for that reason. I was doing it because I thought my butt was too big and I needed to hide it.
Oh,
That's
she's
super
such a great ass. If you guys-
sad.
I just want you to like stand up and show your ass to the camera, but
won't.
that's probably inappropriate.
It's large.
Yeah,
And I'm okay with it.
yes.
No.
But back to just really quickly, I just wanted to say that what had helped me and why I found a little bit of self-love in those 12-step rooms was because it was the first time in my life I ever heard anybody talk about food the way I talked about food. It was the first time I ever heard anybody have the same problems with food, and these were women that I liked.
Yes.
They had these problems and they were still great women.
Yes.
They were still funny and lovable and good mothers and good friends and present and helpful. And even if they were struggling, because food is a struggle. You can't just quit it cold turkey.
You have to eat.
You have to eat 3 times a day usually. But I thought to myself, if I can love all of these people in these rooms, in these groups, and they have the same flaw I do, oh my God, guess what that means? I can love myself too.
Absolutely.
They might feel the same way about me that I feel about them. What a fucking concept, that I could still be worthy and have this deep, dark secret.
Abso-fucking-lutely. I mean, yes, for me, compassion towards other people, through, when I started studying Buddhism, that's a big Buddhist concept, is having compassion for everybody. And maybe I'll be able to have compassion for myself.
Yes.
Give myself a fucking break.
Yeah.
And I never had it's so weird. I never had a problem looking at almost anybody in my life who was in a relationship, who was loved by somebody, and thinking, I can totally see why he loves her. I can totally see why, just put the two names together. Even if that person, I could see their flaws or, their imperfections. It didn't bother me. It didn't impede my ability to see why they were lovable. But for me, I still, to this day, I've been with my husband for 17 years, not married all that time, but for 17, and I still sometimes ask myself, why does he love me? I'm so extra, or I'm not that cute, or I've struggled for so long as to why I am lovable.
Isn't it funny, because we pick apart our individual things that we don't like about ourselves, and nobody views us that way. You're the first person, I think, to tell me that. I might sit here and say, as a child, I overheard my mother talking to her friend about how I was going to have a nose job one day. And I just, from then on, I have a big nose. She wasn't trying to say it in front of me, but I heard it. And so my whole life I've thought, oh my God, you got this big fucking honker. And Erinn, I remember at one point, we'd been friends for 15 or 20 years. She's like, I've never once thought your nose was big. And I was
Never.
like, really? She's
Never.
like, when I look at you, I see the whole of you. I don't sit there and focus in on that. Well, the one thing you'd focus in on is a chin hair, but those fucking chin hairs. But when you take in a person that you care about, you take in all of them holistically. You don't sit there and go,
Yes.
boy, that neck, ooh, she'd just be great if I didn't have to stare at that turkey neck.
Don't.
No one does that, but
and-
we do it to ourselves.
You take it, and I love the word holistically, because that's that's a good way to put it, because you take in, whether you believe in this or not, I do, you take in their energy, you take in the aura they bring into the room, the light they bring, the way they laugh, the way they talk. You also said to me, you don't remember what somebody said to you, you remember how they made you feel.
Yes.
And that's just true, but we'll look at ourselves, pick ourselves apart and oh, my one eye is smaller than my other eye. My one tit is bigger than my other tit.
I have an eyebrow that's higher than the other, and it's real dumb.
I wish we could all just be a little
Oh
as
my
nice
God.
to ourselves as we are to the ones we love.
It's true. And when you love someone, don't they become more attractive?
Oh God. Okay. This is going to be a slight sidebar. When
Yeah.
I started dating Todd, on our first date, he wore, oh God, jean shorts and some really bad,
You wore jorts?
he wore
My first husband wore jorts.
jean shorts and a V-neck white ribbed V-neck sweater tucked into said jean shorts. Okay, and some fucking awful boots. And I still love this man. I was so, like, there was just something about his energy. He was just really strong and really quiet, and he was just so into me. But I kind of thought he was goofy looking. Like, it took me a little bit, but I fell for him real hard.
You fell for him the first night.
I mean, well, I went to bed with him the first night.
Well, I will just say, our friend was super hot on Todd at your birthday party. And I looked at Erinn, who is always deferred, has never overtly been interested in anybody. It's always been subtle. And I was like, careful, I think Catherine likes him. And you're like, and?
I was like,
bitch, move. I was
like, yeah.
Oh.
And I took him home way out of character.
Totally out of character.
But what's funny is I would say about, I don't know, 2 weeks in, I remember just thinking, when did you get so hot? Like, what happened? It was like there was just this hormonal, chemical thing happening. And I just found him, like, incredibly attractive. When you look at somebody and you love somebody, it's not just, I mean, I'm sure there's lots of people who fall in love with somebody based solely on how they look, and I'm sorry for you.
Yeah.
But for most of us, whether it's friendship or romantic love or whatever it is, I think about my mom all the time. She's so beautiful. And, you know, she's older, and she, I think, misses the beauty of her youth. And I always try to tell her, like, but you're seriously beautiful. And yes, you're not the same beautiful you were when you were 20 or 40 or 60, but you are so beautiful because you just bring this electricity and this essence around you.
Yes.
And you're beautiful. And you're also actually just beautiful.
Right.
Like, yeah. Physically beautiful.
Seriously, she's really, really beautiful.
But here's a good question for you, Vanessa. Riddle me this.
Okay.
How do we take what we can clearly know about others? Mm-hmm. You know, I look at you, I don't see your big nose or oh my God, your eyebrow. It is so high. I don't see that. Or my mother. How do we take that, internalize it, synthesize it, and apply it to ourselves?
That is the $64 million question. If we could put that shit in a pill, I would be richer than Bill Gates. Seriously.
I mean, legit.
Yeah.
I wish that
It's practice. The answer, though, is practice. We practice doing it on the daily, and we question the thoughts that pop up into our heads. You know, I forget who said this, but, you know, the mind is a terrible place. Don't go in there alone. You know, so talking about it, I think, is really important. When you talk about your fears, all of a sudden they're less scary, right? Mm-hmm. So when you talk about your self-loathing, your best friend could smack you upside the head and say, what the fuck are you talking about, you idiot? You're fantastic just the way you are. Yeah. And it's practice.
You're absolutely right.
And there's two ways to do it. You talk to yourself how you talk to your kids, or you talk to yourself how you talk to your pets. Like, we just posted that funny meme. Like, what if you talk to yourself the way you talk to your dog? Who's a pretty girl? Look at that belly. Let me rub your belly. I think it's time for a treat. Let's go get you a treat. I was like, why don't we talk to ourselves like that?
And why don't we love ourselves the way we love our pets? We just love them because they feel good, and they're so sweet, and they're good to us, and
they just live in the moment.
I mean, and it's funny because I also am in a 12-step program, Al-Anon, and when you said it's just practice, newcomers will come and they say in all 12-step programs, you have to work the program.
Yes.
What does working the program mean?
It's active.
And to me, I tell people, like, it's not as really mind-blowing as you think. It's about learning these principles, and for each program, they're all based on the same basic ideas, but obviously whether it's eating or drinking or controlism, which is what Al-Anon's about, it's working the steps simply means applying those principles to your life in small ways every single day. So that's really, if you want to beat the negative self-talk, you have to A, recognize you're doing it, B, talk to yourself about it, and then talk to others about it.
Exactly.
Right? You really, really do.
Exactly. That's one of the beautiful things about a 12-step program is you have a community of like-minded individuals, all on varying degrees of success within these rooms.
Yeah.
And you've got a Sherpa to guide you, if you will.
Yeah.
They're always there for you.
And I think with this podcast too,
we'll be your self-love Sherpas.
We will. I mean, because it has to be a conversation. And how does this, okay, so now let's talk about self-love as we age, because this is a really interesting thing. I love my research. I do. Research suggests that age rejectors, I like that word, age rejectors have a better mental health overall, including greater ego, strength, and an active mastery style. I don't really know what that means, but they're mastering their lives in a great way. They don't deny their age, but they refuse to give in to the negative stereotypes or don the negative stereotypes that may be associated with it. They have more positive self-image than their counterparts who identify as old and sick, old and weak, or old and lonely.
Yes. My mother has actually been a shining example of not acting her age.
I love that.
My mom is so good at maintaining her sense of humor, still being
funny.
silly, still being
irreverent.
Absolutely, she's irreverent. When we had that ladies' night party that we talked about in episode 2, where 13 of our glorious friends representing all ages were at your party, somebody who was very young and very fun told the story about giving head in front of my mother, who was 73 at the time. And she said that the experience was akin to waterboarding. And we all almost fell out of our chairs. We were laughing so hard. And my mother was laughing the loudest. And like, you wouldn't normally tell a blowjob story in front of a 73-year-old woman, but my mom was totally here for it. And she just gets it. Because, and that's one place I will toot my own horn, is that she has always remembered what it was like to be any age.
I think
she remembers that
Too.
mindset. Yes. Yeah. Like when I look at my kids and they do something silly or funny, or you know, they're having a problem, I'm like, this is totally normal. Like, of course you're feeling this way. Of course that's how you see it. Of course, you know, like I remember being that age. I remember thinking I was the center of the fucking universe and everything revolved around me, and that you just have to have empathy for all of those different ages and embrace it. And my mom is totally that way. She is super fun and youthful.
She really, really is. And it's funny, at that party, your mom was in her late 60s, my mom's in her 70s, and my neighbor is in her 80s. And all three of them really exemplify that. That's not to say that they don't all suffer from feelings of insecurity.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, think about when they came up too, is how much societal pressure was put on them to be a certain way, look a certain way, do a certain thing. Don't be too much, but don't be too little. Right. You know, don't try too hard, but don't be too lackadaisical.
Exactly.
I mean, God, how do you...
God, she's so extra. Gosh, you should put some more effort in.
Exactly. What's the messaging?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I could go on and on about that. If you wear makeup, you wear too much makeup.
Exactly.
Or why don't you try harder?
With my mom, I know for sure that the men in her life coming up were very vocal about how she should look. Very vocal about how she should act.
Yes. And
so that is something that I think that we as women, especially women of our mom's generation, have really struggled with. And I think that as we were born in the 60s and 70s, they tried to break out of that, and there was a lot of freer thinking. But you can't, it's really hard to get away from that messaging. And so they would unconsciously pass it on to us. And then now here we are in our generation, you have boys trying to teach them a new way to think about women. Me raising, daughter and stepdaughters and trying to empower them with different kinds of thinking. But we do that. It's so subconscious sometimes that we spit shit out to one another. I mean,
or we spit it out about ourselves while we're in front of them. We'll put on a bathing suit and go, oh, I don't want to, mommy doesn't want to go to the beach because I don't like the way I look in a bathing suit.
Exactly.
I'm not going to get in the pool because I don't want to put a suit on. I don't want to play with you in the water.
So sad. How many pictures? Sad. Yeah. And I see this a lot on social media too, as we've gotten to this age, is how many, since Facebook started, 12 years ago or something, I had a bajillion pictures of myself. And all my friends were posting pictures of themselves with their young kids. Pretty soon, you don't see the moms anymore. It's just the kids.
Now the moms are the one taking the
They
pictures.
just disappeared. They don't want to be in the pictures anymore. Mm-hmm. I saw a post about that, and a woman was like, I realized my child was going to have no pictures of us together looking happy because I was so ashamed because I was 20 pounds up.
Right.
Like, what am I saying?
Like, does you think your kid gives two shits about what you weigh? No, they just love you. You're mommy. You're the best. You're perfect.
It's so true.
Yeah. Why don't we see ourselves like that? How do we see ourselves like that? Better question.
I mean, for me, breaking point came for me. I was on just some kind of a little staycation trip in town. I think Todd and I my husband and I went to see a hockey game. It doesn't even matter where we were. We were staying at a hotel. And the next morning, I was in the bathroom and I was getting ready. And this is probably, I would say, I guess maybe 10 years ago, somewhere in that range. And I just had a meltdown for some reason. I don't even really remember why. And he was, what's going on? And I'm like, I just fucking hate myself so much. I hate myself. And I felt that, like, with every fiber of my being. I had such intense self-loathing. And I've been working on myself for a while. I mean, I've been in Al-Anon. I've been doing things. I'd tried to better myself. And the look on his face when I said that, it just stopped me really cold, because he loves me and he thinks I'm really beautiful, and he had no idea that I felt that way, and he feels that way. I think so many of us feel that way.
Yes.
There's this little seed of us that just is full of self-loathing. And just seeing that look on his face, though, honestly, I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my fucking life. I can't live the rest of my days fucking hating myself.
How miserable.
It was horrible. And it's this burden to carry. And I, as a perfectionist, that's a lot of work.
That's a
people.
lot of fucking
So
work.
that was sort of a bit of a turning point for me.
I remember you telling me that story and me just being like, wait, what? Yeah, that's crazy pants.
Well, because I'm
Knock that shit off.
I'm little Miss Susie Perfect.
Right.
Oh, yeah. So that was a turning point.
But before
for
you
me.
improve, you have to realize the problems and the issues, right? So this could have been at the point in your life where you're realizing, oh my God, I've already come so far on this journey. Are you fucking kidding me that I still have so much more to do? Like, I remember being in that space.
Yeah.
And being like, oh God, I'm just so fucking tired of being unhappy with myself and having so many things I should fix or work on. Because any sort of life that's lived in self-analysis, you're going to have that problem. And God bless you people out there that are just thinking you are perfect and everything's fine and there is nothing wrong with you, because I
Send us your secrets.
I applaud you.
Send us your secrets.
I applaud you.
Yeah.
But we've always been so analytical our whole lives about everything.
I just think so many women feel less than. And, I guess, like you said, you have to just practice, figure out what your self-talk is, practice changing that self-talk.
Deprogram it. Yeah.
And
Every time you say something shitty to yourself, you should have some sort of a positive mantra that you can just spit right back out at yourself as often as you talk to yourself negatively.
And if you're surrounding yourself with people who are not uplifting you and telling you every day how wonderful they think you are,
find new friends.
I'm serious. I mean, there's a lot of good memes about that, right? There's a lot of good
yeah.
memes. Like,
So
I'll
many
give me a
good
good one.
memes.
There's like one, I can't remember.
I
should
know.
look it up.
I'm memeless right now. I'm recording this on my phone, or otherwise I'd scroll through my Insta.
Memeless.
I follow like a bajillion pages. And that is one positive of social media.
Absolutely.
Is that you can choose what kind of content you follow. I mean, I know for me, I got off Facebook because I just got so political on there. And my life just became tumultuous when I would go onto Facebook. So I know when I sort of shifted gears over toward Instagram more. And my cousin Carrie also made a conscious decision about this. She says, I am only going to post things that are beautiful or that make me or someone else feel good, because that's what this space is here for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you can control that. When I open my feed for that gray area, I'm going through and doing our social media. I follow so many fucking positive, awesome people and sites that I just feel, I can't tell you, half the pictures on my phone are me screenshotting memes. And
Me too!
Skipping memes. Like, you would look at my phone and say, there's 7,000 pictures on there. You would think I'm a complete and total narcissist or I have 40 children. Nope, it's all memes that make me feel good about myself.
Hey, that sounds like kind of corny and cliche, but sometimes it's the simplest things that really can make a big difference.
Yeah, you can tailor that social media experience to just making you feel good.
To be a supportive situation.
Absolutely.
Rather than something that makes you feel dragged down. And there are obviously, there are 12-step programs. If you have like eating disorders, that's a thing. If you have perfectionism issues, usually there's
drinking or sex or shopping
whatever.
Or gambling. They're all part of the same ism. You've got a God-shaped hole in your heart that's missing.
That's so true.
And you try to fill it with whatever your ism is. And I use the global term God, spirituality, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not religious, but I sure as hell know that there's something out there greater than me.
Right.
And I embrace it.
And obviously you don't have to feel that way to listen to
Absolutely.
us, but my spirituality and my spiritual path has been a big important part of my self-esteem and my
100%.
thoughts of self-love. One thing I also read, and this is a lot of what we've talked about so far, or what we want to talk about, is changing messaging.
Right.
And so I read a statistic that said your self-esteem is thought to peak at 65.
Oh my God. I love having something to look forward to at this age.
But
that just made me so happy.
So well, it's so, okay. For me, it's like, what? But then what about the next, like, 25 years of your life that you may have?
It's just peaking. You're still on a curve.
All right.
So it's just your peak.
So, I mean, like in 15...
It's not going to, like, drop off the next day. It's like you don't turn 66. Oh, you're
You're in
fucked.
the shitter.
No.
But I guess
I mean, think of your life as an arc. Like, that's the top point. And that's still 10 to 15 years away.
Right?
Fuck yeah! Oh, I'm so fired up about that. I am so fired up.
Okay, good. I'm so happy.
Yes.
Well, I think we're doing pretty good on this topic. What have I missed?
I think so too. We want you to know too that this topic is going to be a series.
Oh,
so
yes, indeed.
So many facets to self-love. And, this is just where we sort of let you know who we are a little bit on our journey.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll hopefully talk to lots of women on their journey. We put out some polls and some emails to the women we know, and we've put it up on the page at that.gray.area on Instagram. And you can answer these questions for us too. And we would love to have your ideas of self-love featured, on our next episode. So please.
And we will definitely in future episodes. Yeah, for sure.
DM us. Get all up in our DMs.
Slide into our DMs,
Do
as
it.
Liza would say. Love thyself, ladies. Love thyself.
And give yourself a little self-love.
Wink, wink. Wink, wink. And tell each other that you lift your sisters up.
Absolutely.
All right. Till next time.
Until next time, find your way to the gray.